This is from my journal that I keep. Well, sort of. You see, it started as a journal and then it stopped halfway through, but I'll read the dates off anyway, so the story doesn't seem all that fractured. So, April 17th, 2018. I'm laying on my comfortable couch, binge-watching Netflix when I receive a job alert. 2 places are looking for a mortician. One of them is located here in town, and the other in a town nearby. And I recently earned a degree in mortuary science, so this was perfect. Both job descriptions sound good, and the pay is equal, so I decided to apply to both of them. April 21st, 2018. Both places already replied back, and I'm more than happy about it. I'll soon attend both interviews. May 5th, 2018. The first interview was at the mortuary here in town. Unfortunately, the owners were the type of dumbasses that wanted someone young with 10 years of experience. And needless to say, I didn't get the job. 2 days after being rejected, I drove to the interview in the other town, having no trouble at all finding the place. Its appearance was incredible. It was the total opposite of the funeral home I interviewed at the other day. The other one was basically just a small, modern building, while this one was a huge, vintage-style house. There are not many Victorian-style houses around anymore, so I stood there for a few minutes to admire the beautiful structure. Suddenly, the door opened. Now I was visibly startled. I hadn't even knocked yet, and a tall man with short black hair wearing a gray suit was standing there. "Come in," was all he said. I followed the man around the vintage mansion. The inside totally complemented the outside. It was incredible. If you've ever seen or read Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's what the house reminded me of. Dark and creepy, yet utterly magnificent. I wasn't scared, but I could see why people would find it creepy. This is simply a funeral home located in a small town where there are no other big extravagant buildings. I thought to myself, there's nothing to be scared of. And I was taken to a room that looked like an office where I met an older man. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "Thank you, sir," I answered. "It's a pleasure to meet you." The old man had long white hair, pale skin, and gray eyes. He pointed to a chair as if ordering for me to sit. "When can you start, young man?" he asked as he lit up a cigar. I was shocked. I stammered. "Do you want me to start working today? Is it like a test? Am I going to be having a testing period, like a 90-day period or something?" No. I don't like all these formalities and requirements people have nowadays. I saw your resume and I liked it. You already know the benefits and conditions of the job, which is why you came here today. So, you are hired." Now, I was so thrilled. All I could manage to say at that moment was, "Thank you." The old man, Nikolai, explained that the funeral home was a family-owned business that belonged to him and his son just happened to be the man that had opened the front door and scared the crap out of me. Nikolai was paying a good amount of money. He was laid back. I accepted the job without a second thought. My first week at work. My job isn't easy and I'm pretty used to it. We practiced a lot back when I was studying, and I have seen and touched hundreds of corpses. I no longer get shocked when I see them. As a matter of fact, I never did. Ever since I was a kid and I assisted at my grandma's funeral at 11 years old, I knew what I wanted to do. My mom and some other family members were afraid of seeing her. They claimed they wanted to have the memories of how she once looked while she was still alive and happy. Well, even at 11 years old, I knew that was bullshit. You just don't want to face death. You don't want to face the bitter truth, and you don't want to see a loved one in that state, I thought. It was a closed casket, but I managed to sneak into a room while everybody had coffee, and I opened the casket to see her face. She looked at peace. Her face was relaxed like never before. She looked like a pale-skinned angel. Her body felt slightly cold, but not as cold as people always claim. I hugged Grandma as she lay in the casket, and I realized I was giving her love. Why doesn't anybody care about us after we're dead? Why don't we deserve love and care even after our death? All these thoughts, I don't know, they just made me sad. Years later, while going to other funerals, I noticed the same patterns. People prefer not to have contact with the dead body. But I was addicted to seeing their peaceful faces and giving them the attention that nobody else did. Now please, don't get me wrong. This has never, ever been anything sexual. It's something spiritual. I care for those who no longer matter. Anyway, I digress. While at work, an old white male in his 80s was brought in, and I was supposed to take care of everything. I did my usual and made sure the body looked nice. The old man had died of cardiac arrest, and the body was brought in the morning. I worked on him pretty much the whole day. I even skipped lunch. And that's when I noticed it was already 4 p.m., almost time to go home. I covered the body and made sure that the temperature in the room was okay. I worked in a big basement where the bodies were being kept, so I went upstairs to the first floor and used the bathroom. As I was about to go to the kitchen, I got distracted and started looking around the house. I wandered around looking at everything when I noticed Nikolai's door was open. I saw him giving money to a couple of well-built men. I couldn't hear what they were saying, so I quietly approached the door, not realizing my shoe was untied. And I ended up tripping and knocking the door wide open. I was exposed to all three of them. Sorry, I was looking for the toilet. I excused myself as I got up. Oh, don't worry, son. In fact, I'm very glad you're here. This is Boris and Clemens. They're responsible for bringing the corpses from the hospitals, Nikolai said to me. The two men introduced themselves to me. They were serious and looked rather dirty. I was informed a new corpse was brought in, and I would take care of it the following day. I insisted I work for another hour, but Nikolai said that his son would do the work tonight, and I could just finish it tomorrow. I didn't argue. My second week at work. I was working with the corpse of a woman in her 30s. I read her information and it said she died of natural causes, but something didn't add up. Now call me crazy, but her expression didn't look like that of someone who died of natural causes. I had the feeling that she had been murdered. I'd never had this feeling before, but that contorted mouth gape just left a pit in my stomach. I was so good at guessing what the cause of death was that I was only wrong a couple of times early in my career. Now I realize I'm not really a pathologist, and all I have to do is make sure the body is ready and well presented. All arrangements with the hospitals and the families are done by Nikolai. The third week at work. Working at the funeral home is okay. I make good money, only working 4 days a week. I'm not disturbed by the people, and I'm doing what I always wanted to do. I should be happy, but I'm not. Working at the funeral home is making me doubt my skills, and I think I'm starting to imagine things. I normally handle 2 or 3 corpses a week. I know I am good at what I do, but I seem to be losing my skills. I can no longer tell what the person died of. Some died due to accidents, others due to suicide, and some of natural causes. The reports just don't seem to match up with what I'm seeing. This doesn't happen with every corpse, but it does with most of them. I spoke to Nikolai, who is an expert in this field, and before owning the funeral home, he was a pathologist, so he definitely knows more than I do. Anyway, I'm going to try to relax. After all, it might just be my anxiety kicking in. 6th week of work. I've been trying to spend more time with the families of the deceased ones. I know I probably shouldn't because my job is basically just staying in the basement, getting the corpses ready and cleaning up. I know it's Nikolai and his son's job to greet people, but I'm curious. For such a small town, we sure do have a lot of clients. Unfortunately, I started to involve myself with their families to gain answers, but the only thing I have now is 1,000 questions. 9th week at work. I have been investigating. There's only one other funeral home in this town, and I had no idea about it. Like I said before, I just work here, but I live in another town. Here's where things get a little bit odd. There used to be 3 funeral homes in this town before this one opened. In the past 7 years, they had to shut down. Ever since Nikolai and his family opened this business, crime has increased, and apparently, we're the ones that get the most clients. 13th week at work. Okay, I did something very bad. Something I wasn't supposed to do. I got into Nikolai's office, and what I found was shocking, to say the least. I knew I shouldn't have opened his drawers, but I did. In one of the drawers, I found different folders with the names of the deceased ones. I grabbed one of the folders and found the pictures of one of the corpses I worked with. However, there were not only pictures of his corpse, but there were also pictures of him alive. Pictures of him driving his car, walking his dog, he's grocery shopping. Someone had followed him and taken those pictures. There were 2 papers pretty much saying all the information about the guy, including who he lived with, where he worked, his routine, pretty much anything and everything about him. And I wonder, why would Nikolai have all this information? I grabbed that folder and another 2 for evidence, and I had to hurry because I heard people coming. I left the room as soon as I could, and I still had a couple of hours of work, so I had to finish my duties. I was afraid, anxious, and just not happy to be there, but if I didn't want to seem like a suspect, I had to relax. As I was about to leave, Nikolai came to see me. I was very nervous. I couldn't stop sweating. He asked me if everything was okay and if I were happy working there. I tried to play it cool. I smiled, and I said, "Yeah, I'm really happy, Nikolai." "Is there something you want to tell me?" he asked me. When he said this, my heart stopped beating for a second. Did he know? And I kept trying to convince him everything was fine. He finally smiled and said, "All right then. I hope I see you tomorrow." I grabbed my backpack and left. The drive home from where I worked is 20 minutes. I didn't want to wait that long. I pulled over in a McDonald's parking lot and started to read the documents. I'm 100% certain Nikolai and the rest are involved in dodgy business. And as I was reading the documents, someone knocked on my car window. It happened to be Boris, the guy who brought the corpses to us from the hospital. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I was afraid to roll my window down. He caught me. He was looking down at the documents I was reading. "Why don't you let me in, boy?" said Boris as he tried to open the door, and at that moment, I started the car and drove like mad. I even tried to take a lesser-known road with no traffic at all. I noticed the bike was following me, and I knew Boris had one. He tried to pass by me plenty of times, and at the last time, I swerved and knocked him off the road into a tree. He fell off his motorbike and I saw his body fly into the woods. I pulled over to see if Boris was dead or alive. To my absolute horror and astonishment, it wasn't Boris. It was just some kid on a crotch rocket. I killed an innocent kid out of paranoia. I got back into my car and drove home. Boris was there, standing in my driveway. I was completely distraught. Nikolai needs you back at work. He needs you to explain something to him. I completely broke down. Having a panic attack, I dropped to my concrete driveway, and Boris came up to me and put his huge hand on my shoulder. Listen, kid. He just needs to know why you took those folders. I burst into tears, telling Boris what I had done to the kid on the motorbike. Boris, to my surprise, laughed and told me to get into the car. He drove me back to the scene. He took the body and threw it in the trunk. When we arrived back at the morgue, Nikolai was there waiting for me. If you give me back my folders and don't ask any questions, then I will take care of your little situation, he said as he pointed to the mangled body of the kid, and I simply nodded in agreement. I mean, tell me, what the hell was I supposed to do? Tell the police what I had done? Tell the police that Nikolai and his brutes might be doing hired kills? I mean, after all, with what evidence? I'd worked with Nikolai for 2 years now. I don't ask questions. I simply come to work to do my job and go home. Nikolai pays me well and treats me good. As far as I know, that person I killed was transient with no family. In fact, only one person showed up for his viewing. I tried. I tried to fix his mangled corpse as best I could. But he still haunts my dreams. I sometimes wake up in a bed filled with sweat and tears, and in the very corner of the room, in the pitch black, I could see his corpse in the darkness, faint outline, flesh ripped from his bones, hanging like a shredded curtain of meat, his arms twisted and contorted, flailing as if he were having a seizure. And he stands there staring at me, and I lay frozen in place, horrified of what I'm witnessing. I then close my eyes and I feel it getting closer. The vibrating of his broken bones draws near, and the closer he gets, the louder the grounding of his bones become. I try to sink into my mattress as deep as it will let me, and I try my hardest to hide in my stinking, sweat-drenched sheets. But it gets right in front of my face, opens his putrid mouth, and breathes a stench of decay and foulness I'll never forget. It's a distinct smell of rotten corpse flesh and sun-spoiled yogurt. After what feels like ages, he falls to the ground in a pile and, well, I don't know where he or it goes. One night, I passed a roadside hotel on my way home. I couldn't help but notice the vacancy sign blinking bright red. At first, it bothered me in my sleep-deprived state. And then an idea hit me. It was brilliant. And I made a reckless U-turn in the middle of the road, sped into the parking lot, and threw my car to park right in front of the office. And I'll be damned, quite literally, if I spend one more night with my new roommate, blowing the putrid remains of his breath, or maybe his soul, in my face. I just won't go home tonight. Now, the hotel manager was reluctant to rent me a room. He stressed that they have a strict anti-drug policy. I assured him that I just needed a good night's sleep, and I walked out of the office feeling triumphant with a room key in my hand. I moved my car to the parking spot in front of my room. I let myself in, quickly locked all 3 locks, and checked the window, as if I could lock my nightmares out of the room. But was it just a nightmare? I headed to the shower, thinking out loud. I'm about to find out. I scrubbed the odor of the morgue off of me, attempting to wash off any attachment to the dead. And I pondered the love I had as a boy for corpses. And I thought of crisp, clean sheets, pillowcases with no sweat stains, and hurried to bed straight out of the shower, just buck naked. I slipped under the blankets with wet hair and all, reveling in the newness of the bed and the fresh aroma of shampoo I was leaving on the pillow. I was not surprised to quickly start drifting off into a different state of consciousness, that parallel dimension of peaceful sleep that I missed so much. But sometime during the night, I began to stir from a stench burning my nostrils. I froze in place on my back as I heard the grinding of bones grow louder approaching the bed. I shook uncontrollably, but tried to brace myself for the release of the putrid breath in my face. It didn't matter that I had the blankets pulled tightly over my head. I could see the contorted arms flailing, and I felt something sharp poking me through the blankets as my own body convulsed. The poking was slow and steady on my side. Finally, a poke to my forehead forced me to open my eyes, and his mangled face was directly over mine, eye to eye. As he opened his contorted mouth further, he released a loud, raspy rush of rancid air over me. The shaking entity collapsed into a festering pile of rotten flesh on the floor and vanished, leaving a hint of sulfur and decay in the air. Without a thought or emotion, I went home. I showered again in total defeat. I climbed into my bed in the familiar sweat and tear-stained pillows, and I just lay there staring into the darkness. Again, I was being poked in my side before I even detected the odor. I slowly turned my head to see the familiar decomposing corpse slowly and steadily poking me. And this time, I'd not grab my blankets. With a tear sliding to my pillow, in a small voice I asked, "What do you want?" I swallowed hard as he cocked his head to the side. I pleaded, "Please, talk to me, I'm sorry." And in one furious motion, the corpse was laying on top of me, smothering me in rotten decay. His body on top of my body until our souls seemed to become one. I suffocated on strips of festering meat, desperately gasping for air, and suddenly, he was gone. By morning light, I was still laying in bed, shocked, covered in a slimy film mixed with chunks of putrefied flesh. Tears steadily flowed from the corners of my eyes, soaking my pillow on either side of my face, the mix of rancid fluid slipping down into the salty mixture. The hours pass and the day fades as I lay in the corpse rot, I watch the room grow dark as I silently await the fate that the night brings. And nothing. No poking, no grinding bones, no suffocating. And in the middle of the night, I got up, showered, and changed my sheets. The minute I lay my clean body down, I see the jerking movements of him quickly approaching. I now know what I have to do. I jump up and run to my car, remembering to grab my keys on the way out. I made the 20-minute drive to the morgue in 10 minutes. I let myself in and went straight to where Nikolai and Boris kept the disposable bodies of messes yet to be cleaned up. I grabbed a saw and sawed every piece of rotten flesh from every corpse I could find. I took the bags of decaying flesh home. As I rubbed the corpse rot all over my face and body, I started to laugh. I win. I win. I lay down in my bed, and I sleep. For something I used to love so much, it's now a living nightmare.